guys, I'm Kaitie Thayer from Thayer's Treats here in Bath, and tonight I'm going to show you two different ways to make buttercreams. The first one we're going to start is a Swiss meringue buttercream that requires egg whites and sugar and butter. Those are your basic ingredients in it. I'm adding vanilla to mine for a flavor. You can add any type of extract flavoring that you want. And the second one that we're going to be doing is the traditional American buttercream, which is a little bit sweeter than the Swiss meringue buttercream. That's going to require butter, shortening, powdered sugar, and vanilla. So let's start with the Swiss meringue. I have pre-measured 150 grams of egg whites, and today I'm using fresh egg whites, but you can use cartoned egg whites and it will work amazing. And 200 grams of sugar. Just plain granulated sugar. And now I'm going to take this over to a bain-marie that is already simmering, and we are going to whisk it until the grains of sugar have dissolved. About 160 degrees Fahrenheit. There's two different ways you can do this. You can do the finger method, where after a little while, you're going to see it come together as more like a syrup. Right now it's pretty thick. It will loosen up and become more syrupy. You don't want to do it over too high of a heat. Keep it at like a medium. And we're trying to get all of the granules of sugar dissolved. So you can either cook it to 160 degrees and you can use a thermometer. I love to use an infrared thermometer. I find that's easy. Or you can, when you think it's close to time, put a clean finger in and feel it in between your fingers. If you feel any grains of sugar, keep stirring. If you don't feel any grains of sugar, then it is time for it to go to the KitchenAid. So let's see here. It's coming together nicely and pretty quickly too. Use this. See what temperature we're at. 135. You don't want to cook it much more over 160, otherwise you're going to get sweet scrambled eggs, and that just is not delicious. And also, don't put it on the bain-marie and walk away. You need to whisk. If you walk away, you also run the risk of scrambled eggs. So I have a clean finger, just washed my hands. No sugar, so this is ready to go to the KitchenAid. And it came together very quickly. Sometimes it can take 5 minutes or longer. And that's usually depending on how cold your eggs were when it went in, how warm your water is, humidity, everything. So I'm going to put this on a number 2 to start, and once it gets going, we will pick up the speed a little bit more and push this over to the side. I'm also going to stick this in the sink and wash my hands quick. All right, I'm going to pick up the speed on that, put it on about a 6 or an 8, and that is going to beat for a good 5 to 10 minutes. Might be a little bit less, might be a little longer. But what you're looking for is stiff peaks, and I'll show you what stiff peaks look like. At first, it's going to look super soupy. Don't worry, it will come together, especially if you got it to the right consistency. While that's going, I'm going to start my American buttercream. Now with the American buttercream, I'm using traditional American measurements. You can also use weight measurements, which I do love to use as well. I'm going to use a stick of butter and about half a cup of shortening. You can use more or less shortening. I like to use the shortening with American buttercream because it helps to stabilize it. Now this we're going to mix together. You can use a stand mixer for this as well. I'm just going to use a hand mixer to show you the different ways of doing it. You want it to come together really well. So don't skimp on this part. Get your butter and shortening nice and fluffy. Also, make sure that you're scraping down the sides of your bowl often, especially if it's a bigger bowl like this. If you're using a smaller bowl, it might be a little bit easier, but just scrape it down, put it all together. As you can see, it's already coming together beautifully. And that's because the butter was the right temperature. You want to work with room temperature butter. There we go. That's looking great. So as you can see, definitely fluffier, definitely mixed together really well. So, going to put this all together in the middle. And I'm going to start adding powdered sugar, 1 spoonful at a time. And the reason I do that is because if you run the risk of exploding powdered sugar in your face if you add too much powdered sugar all at once. And go on a low speed when you add the powdered sugar. Trust me on this one, and my kitchen will testify to too many times of just throwing the powdered sugar in. Now this meringue is actually looking really good. Let's show you. As you can see, we have got a nice good peak going on here. It bends over slightly, but it definitely holds its form. So I'm going to give that another minute, and then I'm going to start adding butter to that. So let's mix this American buttercream up a little. Part of the reason also to add in your powdered sugar by the spoonful instead of by the cup is so that you can gauge how much powdered sugar you need. Every day is going to be different. If it's a really humid day, you are going to need more powdered sugar just because of the fact that there's a lot of humidity in the air, and that's just the way these things work. If it's a dry day, you're going to need less powdered sugar. So if you're running an air conditioner or a dehumidifier in your kitchen, you might find that you use less of the dry ingredients that recipes call for. But if you've got a very humid kitchen, you're going to find that you need to add more dry ingredients than what recipes call for. Altitude and humidity, it always plays a huge role. So this buttercream is coming together nicely. I'm going to add another spoonful of powdered sugar, and then we are going to head over to the Swiss meringue and start to complete that one. So there we go. Mixed up pretty nicely. And it's holding its shape good. So that is perfect. We're going to come back to that, color it, and also add some flavoring to it. Now, stiff peaks in the meringue. So it's time to start adding the butter. This is the time when you're going to freak out a little, but it's okay. When you start to add your butter, and this is 1 pound of butter, at first it's going to look soupy. And you're going to wonder, what have I done? And is this even going to work? trust me, as it incorporates, it will work. Just a little bit at a time. Don't dump all of your butter in at once. You run the risk of overwhelming your meringue. I cut this into about, tablespoon and a half size chunks. There we go. It's already starting to look good. This is about what you want it to look like. And it will also thicken up considerably at the end. So this is the part where you're going to think, oh no, what have I done? Don't worry. It will come back together once all the butter is incorporated. Now, if you do this and it doesn't come together after you've incorporated all of the butter, that can be a couple of reasons. Your meringue wasn't stiff enough peaks, in which case, stick it in the refrigerator for about half an hour and then continue whipping it. It should come together. Or it's too hot and humid, in which case, stick it in the refrigerator for about half an hour and then continue whipping it, and it will come together. Don't throw away your Swiss meringue buttercream. It will come together, I promise. It just requires patience sometimes and a little bit of extra oomph, whether it's the refrigerator, the freezer. One time I even had to throw it in the refrigerator overnight and then beat it the next day because it was so hot and humid. Now, that's come together beautifully. Let's beat it until it looks whiter. You want to beat it really well because you want the buttery taste to not overwhelm your frosting. If you don't beat it enough, it's going to taste very buttery. So that is looking great. And these came together much faster than they normally do because it's perfect temperatures out there today. There we go. Let's show you what that looks like. Now this is absolutely perfect for frosting a cake or cupcakes, but a little secret, if you want it to frost your cake even more, you want to beat it a little bit longer and then you temper it over the oven. Tempering your Swiss meringue buttercream helps to go over the cake. I'm going to wash my hands again. And now it is time to flavor and color. So we're flavoring both with vanilla. If you don't want to use vanilla, you don't have to. You can use no flavorings. You can use whatever flavorings you have on hand. That's on there tight. We might not use vanilla. We're not going to use vanilla. There's another vanilla in the drawer. There we go. For vanilla, I just add a splash, which is about a teaspoon. I'm going to beat that, and then I'm going to also add a splash to this, just about a teaspoon. I personally love vanilla in my buttercreams. I feel like it just adds that little bit of better taste to it. Now, if you don't want the vanilla to change the color of your buttercream, you can always use a clear vanilla. But if you beat it enough, the color mostly comes out. So here we go. 2 buttercreams already prepared. Now I'm going to show you how to color it, and then I'm going to pipe it on a few cupcakes. So American buttercream is the easiest. It comes together the quickest. It requires the least amount of work. Seriously, just a stick of butter, a stick of shortening, and some powdered sugar. It's perfect if you're in a rush. Swiss meringue buttercream is very good though, and it keeps really well. You can put it in the freezer, and it will stay good in the freezer for up to 6 months in a, obviously, sealed container. And it also stays good in the refrigerator in a sealed container for up to about a month. American buttercream, it does better in the refrigerator than the freezer. You can freeze American buttercream, but it might not come together as well. So you might find that you have to beat it after you bring it out. Now let's see what colors we have here. We have got red, yellow, orange, pink, green. Let's do a little bit of orange in our Swiss meringue buttercream. And then I'm going to use about a drop or two. I'm going to also grab a knife. That's the easiest way to get this out. So, you don't need much, especially with a gel food color. A little bit goes a long ways. Let's try that, a drop, and see how it turns out. As you can see, it's already starting to turn orange, but I wanted a little bit more orange, so let's give it another drop. So with gel food colorings, a little goes a long way, but if you want a more brilliant color, add more. If you want a lighter pastel color, add a little bit less. I'm going to add one more drop. If it will come off. There we go. Make it more of a fall color. And then, because pink is my favorite color, we're going to add pink to the American buttercream. Now this recipe has a little bit less in it than the other recipe, you might notice. And that's because we used less ingredients. I didn't think that I needed to make huge batches for both of them, but this recipe easily doubles, triples, quadruples. You can play around with your measurements as well as to what works for you. You might prefer more butter. You might prefer more shortening to stabilize it. And I am going to add another scoop of powdered sugar to stabilize this. Probably another half a scoop here. We want to be able to pipe this on our cupcakes and have it hold a shape. So you don't want it too runny. And look at that beautiful color. Pink is honestly amazing. There we go. Now, I'm going to put these knives to the side, bring some cupcakes over, and start to decorate some cupcakes. So, what I have here is a Wilton 2D piping tip and a Wilton 1A piping tip. These two are the easiest tips to work with. Seriously, it's just, you're going to find that you can do so many different ways of decorating your cupcakes with them or your cakes with them. I use them all the time in cakes, cupcakes, macarons. They all work brilliantly. So the easiest way to do this is to flip your bag down some and use a glass. But I'm not going to use a glass. I'm going to just go for it with my hand and scoop some of this buttercream right into the bag. These are reusable piping bags. You can do a reusable, you can use disposable, whatever you are most comfortable with. I use both. Honestly, I use a lot more of the disposable than I would like, but they work good in a pinch. So there is that. And the reason to flip the bag over is so that the top of your bag doesn't have icing to get all over your hand. We'll push that down to the bottom. Now let's fill our other bag. Once again, flip it. Make sure it's open good. Oh my gosh. I personally love Swiss Meringue Buttercream. Not everybody does. Some people prefer the sweeter American buttercreams. So, you know, shout out in the comments, what do you prefer? A sweet buttercream, or do you prefer the more buttery one? I like this one. It's sweet, but it's not overly sweet. Also, if you're doing a cake, a layered cake, and you want to put your Swiss Meringue Buttercream on it, and you want to get super smooth edges and super smooth sides, a tip is to temper your Swiss Meringue Buttercream. Put it over a bain-marie for just a couple minutes until it gets really soft. Then pour it over the top of your cake. It will come back together to this nice stiff consistency, but it will go onto the cake that much easier. Let's push this down to the bottom. There we go. Now I'll grab a couple of cupcakes. This off to the side. Also take care of that. Sorry for the spill on the counter, guys. It's working with buttercreams. It's going to be a mess. So I just made some chocolate cupcakes in these cute little liners. I'm in love with these liners. And I brought some Halloween sprinkles, sorcery, because it's October 1st, and that means, therefore, it's Halloween, if you ask any of the kids I watch. So I'll show you, starting with the 1A, how it pipes on. I'm going to start in the middle, just pipe around, and pipe up. Another way that you can do it is just pipe around and make it look like a flower. Another way that you can do it is to make it look like little petals. And then pipe a center. So that is 3 different ways to use the 1A. Very easily, very quickly. As you see, they came together well. And depends on how much icing you like too. There are some people that cupcakes are the vehicle for icing, and others where they prefer more cupcake than actual icing. Now this Wilton 2D is one of my favorite tips to make it look like a flower. So that's what we're going to do with this one. As you can see, it does a really beautiful rose. You can also, if you want more icing, pipe a little bit more to the center and then go around. Let's do that one more time. So pipe a little mound in the center, then go around. And there you have it. Some pretty little cupcakes. And then, of course, some sprinkles. Because if you're going to have cupcakes, they need to be extra and they need to be sparkly. These ones are nice, fun Halloween colors. There we go, you guys. Buttercream 2 different ways, and how to put it on cupcakes. I hope that this was informational to you. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to comment or message me. you can message me on Thayer Treats. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I answer any of my messages on there. I hope that you give me a follow, and if you have ideas for any other classes you would like to see, or some buttercream techniques that you would like to see, maybe putting it on layered cakes or flowers, let us know. Have a good night, everybody.